What if I told you that the most powerful people in the room are never the loudest? They don't argue, they don't beg, they don't chase, they engineer. Right now, someone in your life is making decisions they think are their own, but aren't. Someone is choosing to trust you, fear you, follow you, or need you because someone else designed it that way. The question is, are you the one designing or the one being designed? This is the Machiavelli mindset. And by the end of this video, you will never look at power, people, or yourself the same way again. Stay with me, because what comes next, most people aren't ready to hear. 500 years ago, a man sat in exile, stripped of power, broken by circumstance, and he wrote a book that terrified kings. Niccolo Machiavelli didn't write a philosophy of kindness. He didn't write about fairness or virtue in the way the church preached it. He wrote the truth. He wrote about how power actually works, how people actually behave, how the world actually rewards those who understand human nature and punishes those who don't. That book, The Prince, was banned, burned, called immoral, called evil. And yet every ruler, every CEO, every strategist worth their position has read it. Because the Machiavelli mindset isn't about being cruel, it's about being clear, clear-eyed about people, clear-eyed about yourself, clear-eyed about the invisible game that is being played around you at all times, whether you acknowledge it or not. In the next 25 minutes, I'm going to break this mindset down into its core components, the principles that Machiavelli understood and that the powerful have quietly applied ever since. This isn't a history lesson, this is a blueprint. Let's begin. Here is the first thing Machiavelli understood that most people refuse to accept. It doesn't matter what you are, it matters what people believe you are. Read that again. Not your intentions, not your character, not your private virtues. What people perceive, that is your true power currency. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, and religious, whether he is or not. Because people judge by appearances. They judge by what they see, what they feel, what story they construct in their minds about you. This is not manipulation, this is psychology. And psychology is neutral. It is a tool. The question is always, who is holding it? Think about the people in your life who seem effortlessly respected. The person at work who walks into a room and the energy shifts. The person whose opinion seems to carry more weight than others with the same information. Are they smarter? Sometimes, but more often, they've mastered perception. They dress with precision, they speak with economy, saying less than necessary, they respond rather than react, and in doing so, they signal, I am in control, not of others, first and always, of themselves. But here's what most people never realize. Perception is not built in the moments you think it's built. It's not the big speech, the dramatic gesture, the impressive credential. Perception is built in the micro moments, the pause before you answer, the calm in your face when someone expects panic, the way you hold eye contact for exactly 1 second longer than comfortable. The Machiavelli mindset teaches you to become an architect of micro moments, to understand that every interaction is a small piece of data that people are filing away, building a picture of who you are, what you're worth, and whether you're someone to be respected or ignored. Most people are unconsciously broadcasting weakness, anxiety, neediness, uncertainty. The Machiavellian mind broadcasts none of that. Not because the emotions don't exist, but because they are disciplined, contained, deployed only when chosen. Stay with me. The next principle is where things get dangerously practical. Machiavelli understood something about information that the internet age has completely forgotten. Scarcity creates power. Mystery creates influence. We live in an era of radical transparency. People share everything, their opinions, their insecurities, their plans, their fears, in real time to anyone who will listen. And in doing so, they hand their power to strangers for free. The Machiavelli mindset operates on the opposite principle. You reveal what serves you, you conceal what doesn't, and you always know more than you show. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves." The fox, that is the figure of intelligence and concealment. The one who moves quietly, who maps the terrain before committing, who never charges directly at what it wants. In practice, this looks like this. When someone asks your opinion in a high-stakes setting, you don't answer immediately. You ask a question instead. What's your thinking on it? Now they've shown their hand. You've shown nothing. And you can calibrate your response with full information. When you're planning a move, professionally, personally, strategically, you don't announce it, you execute it. Announcements invite interference. Silence invites no resistance. When someone tries to provoke you into revealing your emotional state, you don't take the bait, because the moment you react emotionally, you've given them a map. You've shown them exactly which button to press. This is where everything changes, because most people think that being strategic means being cold, being calculating, being somehow inhuman. But the Machiavellian reality is the opposite. Strategy is the most human thing. Every person who has ever built something lasting, a relationship, a reputation, an empire, did it through disciplined intelligence, not raw impulse. Impulse is the enemy of power. Patience is its most loyal ally. This next part is critical, so don't look away. Machiavelli was, above all, a student of human nature. And what he understood, what separated him from every idealist of his age, is this. People are not driven by what they say they want. They are driven by what they feel they need. There is a difference, a profound, strategically crucial difference. Someone says they want honest feedback. What they need is to feel respected. Someone says they want a better deal. What they need is to feel like they won. Someone says they want change. What they need is to feel safe enough to change. If you respond to what people say, you will always be one step behind. If you respond to what people need, emotionally, psychologically, at the level of identity and ego, you become almost supernaturally effective. This is the invisible architecture of influence, and it's the core operating system of the Machiavelli mindset. Machiavelli observed that the greatest rulers didn't command through force alone. They commanded by giving people a story to believe in, a story in which those people played a meaningful role, a story that made obedience feel like choice and loyalty feel like pride. That is not deception. That is a deep, ruthless, sophisticated understanding of what it means to be human. But here's what most people never realize. You can study psychology for years. You can read every book on influence, persuasion, negotiation, but none of it lands until you've developed one foundational skill: the ability to observe people without agenda. Most people observe others through the filter of themselves, their own needs, their own insecurities, their own desired outcomes, and that filter distorts everything. The Machiavellian observer sets that filter aside. They watch with cold clarity. They notice what makes someone light up and what makes them deflate. They notice who someone becomes when they're threatened versus when they're praised. They notice the gap between words and behavior, and they know that gap is where the truth lives. Develop this skill and you will understand people better than they understand themselves, and that understanding is a form of power that cannot be taken from you. Here is a principle that separates the amateur strategist from the true practitioner of the Machiavelli mindset. You don't control people, you control the conditions in which people make decisions. Direct control is fragile. It creates resistance, resentment, rebellion. Force someone to do something and they comply, but they're already planning their exit or their revenge. But engineer the environment in which someone makes a choice, and they'll make the choice you want, and they'll believe it was entirely their own. Machiavelli understood this intuitively. He wrote about how a ruler must control the flow of information, the structure of alliances, the framing of choices. Not do this or else, but here are your options, where all roads, subtly, lead to the same destination. In your life, this plays out constantly. The meeting you schedule in your office rather than theirs. Environment gives you authority. The way you present a proposal with 3 options, 2 of which are obviously inferior. You've made the outcome feel like their decision. The relationship you invest in before you need it, so that when the moment comes, the loyalty is already there. This is where everything changes. Because the moment you stop trying to control people directly and start controlling context, framing, and environment, the resistance dissolves. You stop pushing against human nature and start flowing with it. People want to feel autonomous. The Machiavellian mind gives them that feeling and directs the outcome simultaneously. This isn't manipulation in the cheap sense. Manipulation is clumsy, short-sighted, easily detected, and ultimately self-defeating. What we're describing is architecture, the careful, patient design of situations in which the outcomes you want become the natural, logical, even obvious choice for everyone involved. Stay with me, because the next section is the one that will genuinely change how you carry yourself every single day. Machiavelli asked one of the most dangerous questions in political philosophy: is it better to be loved or feared? His answer: ideally, both. But if you must choose, Fear is safer because love is conditional. Love depends on how the other person feels that day, what they want, whether you've disappointed them recently. Fear is more reliable. It endures. But Machiavelli was more sophisticated than that single line suggests, because he immediately warned, never be hated. Fear without hatred is sustainable. Fear combined with hatred destroys. What does this mean practically? What does the Machiavelli mindset actually prescribe? It prescribes consequence, not cruelty, consequence. People must know, not through your words, but through your history of action, that there are costs to crossing you, that you are not endlessly forgiving, that your patience is a choice, not a weakness, that there exists a line. You don't announce this line, you don't threaten it, you simply hold it, calmly, consistently, without drama or emotion. And when someone crosses it, you respond once, clearly, proportionally, and then you are done. No extended punishment, no ongoing resentment, no performance of anger, one clear, proportional consequence, and then return to equilibrium. This is what separates power from pettiness. Pettiness is emotional, it's reactive, it announces itself and seeks an audience. Power is quiet, it simply acts, and then it moves on. But here's what most people never realize. The other side of this equation, favor, is equally strategic. Machiavelli understood that generosity, deployed at the right moment, creates loyalty that is almost impossible to dissolve. Not constant generosity, that becomes expected and therefore worthless. Strategic generosity, the unexpected gift, the favor offered before it was asked for, the recognition given publicly when it wasn't anticipated. These moments land with extraordinary force, precisely because they're not routine. The Machiavellian practitioner manages favor and consequence the way a master musician manages sound and silence. Both matter, both must be wielded with precision, and the space between them is where real influence lives. Everything we've discussed, perception, concealment, human nature, environmental architecture, consequence, and favor, all of it collapses without this. Self-mastery is the foundation of all power. Machiavelli could be ruthlessly clear about human weakness because he was ruthlessly honest about his own. He knew that the man who cannot govern himself will never truly govern others, that every external failure has an internal root. The Machiavelli mindset begins, not with strategy toward others, but with strategy toward yourself. What does self-mastery look like through a Machiavellian lens? It looks like emotional regulation first, the ability to experience an emotion, anger, fear, desire, grief, without being commanded by it, to feel it fully and act independently of it. This is not suppression. Suppression is weakness, wearing the mask of strength. True regulation is the capacity to choose your response regardless of internal state. It looks like radical honesty with yourself. The Machiavellian mind has no tolerance for self-deception. You are not as skilled as you think in some areas. You are more capable than you believe in others. You have patterns, reactions, fears, habits that are working against you. Name them, face them, not with shame, with strategy. It looks like the relentless prioritization of long-term outcomes over short-term comfort. Every time you choose the uncomfortable action that serves your goals over the comfortable action that betrays them, you are building Machiavellian discipline. Every time you choose the reverse, you are eroding it. This is where everything changes, because the world we live in is engineered for impulsivity, for distraction, for the immediate reward, the instant response, the shallow engagement that feels productive but builds nothing. The person who can operate on a different time horizon, who can endure short-term discomfort in service of a long-term vision, is already operating at a level most people will never reach. And that patience, that discipline, that capacity for strategic suffering, that is the invisible backbone of the Machiavelli mindset. This next part is critical. Don't close this tab. Section 7, the seventh principle, adapt or be devoured. Machiavelli's final and perhaps most underappreciated lesson is this. The ruler who cannot adapt to changing circumstances will fall, regardless of how brilliant his past victories. Fortune, Machiavelli wrote, is like a river in flood. It destroys everything in its path unless you have built the dams and channels to direct its force. And even then, the river changes. New floods come from new directions. The infrastructure that saved you yesterday may be irrelevant tomorrow. The Machiavelli mindset is not a fixed ideology. It is a dynamic practice, a commitment to remaining fluid in strategy, in approach, in self-conception, while holding firm on values, direction, and standards. The greatest mistake of the strategically minded is early calcification. They find something that works, a persona, a tactic, a relationship structure, and they repeat it past its usefulness, because it feels like identity now, because change feels like loss. The Machiavellian practitioner holds all tactics loosely. What served in one environment is released without attachment when the environment changes. The identity remains. The methods evolve. But here's what most people never realize. Adaptability is not inconsistency. The weak and desperate change constantly because they have no center. The powerful adapt precisely because they do have a center, a clear, unwavering sense of objective and principle, and they serve that center by using whatever approach the moment demands. Be water, but know exactly where you're flowing. Read the room, read the relationship, read the historical moment, and respond to what is, not to what you wish was, not to what used to be. This is the final discipline of the Machiavelli mindset, and it is the one that separates those who have one or two great seasons in life from those who sustain power, relevance, and impact across decades. So, let's come back to the question we started with. Are you the one designing or the one being designed? Machiavelli's genius was not cruelty, it was clarity. The willingness to see the world as it is, not as we're told it should be, and to operate accordingly. The Machiavelli mindset is not for the person who wants to dominate others for the sake of dominance. That's not power, that's insecurity in expensive clothing. This mindset is for the person who is done being naive, who is done confusing kindness with weakness and aggression with strength, who understands that the deepest form of respect you can show the world is to engage with it intelligently. It's for the person who wants to build something real, to lead without forcing, to influence without begging, to move through the world with the kind of quiet, grounded, strategic confidence that doesn't need to announce itself because it's felt the moment you enter a room. 7 principles. 7 layers of a mindset that has shaped some of the most consequential figures in human history. Perception is reality. Conceal what you don't need to reveal. Understand what people truly need. Control the environment, not the person. Deploy consequence and favor with precision. Master yourself above all else. And adapt. Always adapt. Without losing your center. That is the Machiavelli mindset. Now, the real question is, what are you going to do with it? If this video shifted something in you, if it gave you a framework you didn't have before, then do one thing, share it with someone who's ready for this level of thinking. Not everyone is, but the ones who are, they need to find this. Subscribe if you want more content that operates at this level. No fluff, no feel-good noise, just the kind of strategic, psychological depth that actually changes how you think and how you move. Machiavelli didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the few who were willing to see clearly. This video was made for the same people. You know who you are. What if I told you that the most powerful people in the room are never the loudest? They don't argue, they don't beg, they don't chase, they engineer. Right now, someone in your life is making decisions they think are their own, but aren't. Someone is choosing to trust you, fear you, follow you, or need you because someone else designed it that way. The question is, are you the one designing or the one being designed? This is the Machiavelli mindset. And by the end of this video, you will never look at power, people, or yourself the same way again. Stay with me, because what comes next, most people aren't ready to hear.